Hey everyone, today I wanted to talk a little bit about this lens, the magnificent EF 70-200 f2.8 IS II USM. It's a mouthful, but it is an incredibly sought after lens because it covers a very popular focal length of 70-200 at f2.8, but mostly, and also with image stabilization, but mostly because it is incredibly sharp. The picture quality that can be derived from this lens is outstanding. And that is why you see so many professionals with this lens. And so many professionals also pair this lens with the 24-70 too, that then gives them that incredible focal range of 24-200 all at f2.8, all with magnificently sharp, clear photos. However, this is a $2,000 lens and not everybody can afford a $2,000 lens. So I wanted to show you a couple of very compelling alternatives to this lens. Lenses that are equally sharp and can provide equally professional image quality. The first one being the baby brother to this lens, the 70-200 f4 IS, and the other one being a prime alternative, the EF 135mm f2. These two lenses provide equally sharp, equally high, equal quality photos to the 70-200 f2.8, but each of these lenses has their own strengths and weaknesses that we'll go over. The question you might immediately ask is, why do I pick these two lenses when there are so many other lenses that fall in the same focal length as this lens? Well, let's quickly take a look at some of the other Canon lenses that fall in the same range. And as you can see, there's quite a few of them. But really, if you consider the image quality you get out of these lenses, you can drop quite a few straight away. And then if you consider the aperture you get out of this lens, you can drop the rest. So really you're left with just a handful of prime lenses and the other 70-200 lenses. Which begs the question, why aren't I considering the non-IS 70-200 lenses? Well, they are getting long in the tooth now, and the image quality isn't up to par with these two image stabilized versions. So we discount them as well. Let's stop for a second and consider what they're actually used for. And there's many uses for this focal length and there's apertures. One of the primary ones is, of course, event photography, weddings and so forth, where being able to snap people from a distance but yet still have a fairly shallow depth of field so that you can make the subject pop, as in this photo, is very important. This is a very popular use for these lenses. Another use is portrait photography. I love using lenses with a bit of length for portrait photography because you don't have the camera directly in the face of the subject. With a bit of distance, the subject will act more naturally and you'll get a better photo. I also use these lenses for nature photography from time to time, although I do like, in nature photography, you generally want a little more length than 200mm. I use these lenses a lot for family photography as well. Something once again like the portrait photography, where having a bit of distance allows people to act more naturally. And finally, one of my other favorite uses for this type of lens is action photography. They focus so quickly that you could get an action shot just about every time with one of these lenses. Even this dog running towards me, the lens was able to keep up with the focus and snap the shot. And I find these types of photos very appealing indeed. So let's take a look at some of the specifications of this big lens. It was introduced in 2010, so fairly recently. This was an updated version of the previous 1 series. They improved the image stabilization and the sharpness. It's just an all-round better lens than the 1 series, but the 1 series still does. There's still a lot of them out there and they are great value for money. It's heavy and long, at over 3 pounds in weight and over 8 inches in length. This is a big lens. Obviously, the good things about it are its aperture, its image stabilization, and weather sealing. The price at over $2,000, as I said before, is a little out of the reach of some people. So to summarize, what we love about it is the magnificent image quality and sharpness that you get from this lens. The focal length obviously is very useful, 70 to 200. That continuous aperture, no matter what focal length you're at, of a maximum of 2.8, and the image stabilization, which is good for up to 4 stops. What we're not so keen on is the price of over $2,000 and its size and weight. Looking at it on the camera, as you can see, it's a big, heavy bertha of a lens. So I guess this is one of the downsides. I mean, it's hand holdable, but you wouldn't want to for any length of time. It's quite a heavy lens. And an awkward lens to carry around with you. You have to have a fairly decent sized pack or backpack to carry this lens around in. So looking at the 70 to 200 f4 IS, it was introduced a little while ago now, in 2006, but that was still after they started using this new fluoride coating process that gives them the sharpness that we enjoy in these lenses. At the time of release, this was the sharpest zoom lens Canon made, so it's still one of the sharpest zoom lenses in the range, and that's why it compares so well with the bigger f2.8. It was sharper than the Series 1 f2.8, and still retains one of the best image quality of a zoom lens in the Canon range today. What we love about it, of course, is that it's half the weight of the 2.8. It's a little shorter. It still retains the 4-stop image stabilization and the weather sealing. What we don't love so much is that it's only an f4, so that's a full stop slower. So you're getting half the light into the camera, and you're not getting such wonderful background blur or depth of focus, short depth of focus that you enjoy with the 2.8. And unfortunately, it's still quite a long lens. If we look at the lens on the camera, compare it to the 2.8, you see it is a shorter lens than the 2.8, and it's considerably easier to use just because the weight is half the weight of the 2.8, but still a long and awkward lens to carry around with you. Next is the prime lens we're looking at here today, the EF 135mm f2. It was introduced a long time ago, back in 1996, which really is a testament to how wonderful this lens is that it really doesn't need updating. It's still magnificently sharp and produces beautiful photos. It has a little more vignetting in the edges, around the edges of the frame, but sharpness is outstanding. It beats both the zoom lenses for sharpness, particularly at 2.8. It's stopped up to its maximum aperture of 2. It starts to lose a little bit in the edges, but it's still a magnificently sharp lens wide open. What we love about this lens, of course, is that it is so much smaller and lighter than the other two, so it's much easier to carry around with you. And it's priced right at about $1,000, so still less than half the price of the 2.8, yet has a better aperture of f2. So you're getting the magnificent low light photos, the sharp, small depth of field, good background blur that you're getting with the 2.8, and in some cases a little bit better than the 2.8 because it's only an f2. What's not so great about this lens, of course, is that it is a fixed focal length. At 135, it falls right in the middle of the 70 to 200 range, so you have to do a little bit more walking, I guess, getting your camera closer or further away, whereas the zoom could take care of that on the other lenses. Has no image stabilization and is not weather sealed. If we look at it on the camera, as you can see, it's so much easier to have this lens than either of these two lenses. It's shorter, it's lighter, it's very hand holdable, and because it's such a fast lens, you often get away with not having the image stabilization. I love using this lens. So finally, let's take a look at the different results you get with these three lenses. And really, they're more similar than they are different in my eyes. Let's start with the focal length of the 70 to 200s. Starting at 70, then up to 135, and finally 200. You can see the real versatility of this focal length. Now let's look at the difference between the f2.8 and the f4. This photo is the f2.8 and this photo is the f4. The difference you see is the broader focal length because of the lower aperture. Other than that, they're very similar photos. And if we drop back to 135, we can do the same exercise between the f2.8 and the f2 of the 135 lens. And they are actually very, very similar. And at 200 millimeters, the f2.8 might actually have the advantage in background blur because you get a very, very small depth of field at 200 at f2.8. Okay, to sum up, there's no perfect lens out there. You know, the 2.8, 70 to 200 comes pretty close, but some people just cannot justify spending over $2,000 on a lens, so need to look for an alternative. And these other two lenses are great alternatives. You know, if you're looking for that focal length, that 70 to 200, and the aperture may not be as important to you, then certainly the f4 is worth considering. Still an incredibly sharp lens, still has that excellent image stabilizer, and is an all-round great lens. Or the prime lens. You know, it doesn't have the flexibility of the focal length, but you know, you can get away with getting closer or getting further away to get the same photo, but still has the outstanding image quality and an even better aperture of f2 than the very expensive lens. You know, I've owned all three of these lenses. I currently own the 135 and the 70 to 200 f2. I used to own the f4. I bought the f4 back in 2006 when it was released and kept it for about 5 years. But I find I never used it when I owned these two lenses. So I sold it. And an interesting point is never be afraid to invest in a lens, because you very rarely lose that much money off them. I bought my f4 in 2006 when at their highest price. I sold it 5 years later for only $150 less. You know, it's not like a camera body where you lose money each time there's a new generation out. Generally, lenses hold their value, so they can be a great investment. But that said, if you ask me which lens of these three do I use the most, obviously I don't use the f4 anymore. I did when I had it, but not as much as these two lenses. The 2.8 is a great all-round lens if you've got it. However, it's heavy and cumbersome, and so I don't take it with me everywhere. I take it to events like weddings or parties or whatever. If I have to get a great shot, then this is the lens that I'm going to have on my camera during an event like that. But generally, day to day, I carry the 135 round with me. It does everything that I want it to do. It can take even better photos than the f2.8 can if you've got the focal distance right. It's a lovely lens. It's so sharp, it takes such beautiful photos, and that aperture allows such flexibility. You take a photo in any light just about with the f2. And you know, it's such a magnificent portrait lens. It really does give such beautiful quality photos. Anyway, so I hope this video has been helpful to you. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments below, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you.